Welcome to the very bottom of YouTube, because if you've chosen to watch Page Bait, it can only mean that this was a last resort after you've watched literally everything else on the internet. That's right, this is the show where I read and react to the most popular books that I know nothing about. And today we are doing another Brandon Sanderson, because guess what? The man wrote a lot of books. Let's dive into it. Doop doop doo boop 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 boop. Read sample. Tress of the Emerald Sea, a New York Times bestseller. Skip all this boring stuff. Ooh, that's pretty. I like the art on this one. We got a floating girl with a teacup. Floating girl. Contents. Chapter 1. The girl. Ah, we're going to learn about the floating girl with a teacup or another girl. We'll see. In the middle of the ocean, there was a girl who lived upon a rock. I like this fairy tale feeling of the opening. This was not an ocean like the one you have imagined, nor was the rock like the one you have imagined. The girl, however, might be as you imagined, assuming you imagined her as a thoughtful, soft-spoken, and overly fond of collecting cups. I love this opening. I love Call Me Old-Fashioned. I like the third person omnipresent voice, and I think it's because from reading fairy tales when I was a kid. I know that's not the hip cool thing now, but that will always be my favorite style of writing, especially because you can do a lot of really fun stuff with it when the narrator tells the reader things that the main character doesn't know. It can add either suspense or humor that way. If it's done well, like any other voice, it can be done badly. But let's see how it's done here. The girl, however, might be as you imagined, assuming you imagined her as thoughtful, soft-spoken, and overly fond of collecting cups. Men often describe the girl as having hair the color of wheat. Others called it the color of caramel, or occasionally the color of honey. I feel like, I mean, I feel like men would just say like light brown. I guess Brandon Sanderson has a more sophisticated color scale than most men, but we'll go with that wheat. The girl wondered why men so often use food to describe women's features. There was a hunger to such men that was best avoided. In her estimation, light brown was sufficiently descriptive. Brandon Sanderson is like just reading my mind. Like I make a comment and then he like is like, "Yes, I will affirm that for you." I like this. Though the hue of her hair was not its most interesting trait. What would be her hair's that would be her hair's unruliness. Each morning she heroically tamed it with a brush and comb, then muzzled it with a ribbon and tight braid. Yet some strands always found a way to escape and would wave free in the wind, eagerly greeting everyone she passed. The girl had been given the unfortunate name of Glorf upon her birth. Don't judge, it was a family name. But her wild hair earned her the name everyone knew her by, Tress. That monkeyer was, in Tress's estimation, her most interesting feature. Tress had been raised to possess a certain inalienable pragmatism. Such is a common failing among those who live in dour, lifeless islands from which they can never leave. Okay, everything. I love the sass right here that I'm getting. Yeah, I've read a couple of Brandon Sanderson's books, and I've sampled a couple of Brandon Sanderson's books, and this one I'm loving the sass here. This one is my favorite so far, based on like these page and a half that I've read so far. So good job, Brandon Sanderson. I am loving the sass in this writing. And by the way, third person omnipresent is an excellent voice if you're doing sass. Like I think first person is great if you're doing angst, but yeah, third person's great if you're doing sass. When you are greeted each day by a black stone landscape, it influences your perspective on life. The island was shaped rather like like an old man's crooked finger, emerging from the ocean to point toward the horizon. It was made entirely of barren black saltstone, and was large enough to support a fair-sized town and a duke's mansion. Though locals called the island the Rocks, its name on the maps was Diggin's Point. No one remembered who Diggin was anymore, but he had obviously been a clever fellow, for he left the rock as soon after naming it and never returned. In the evening, Tress would often sit on her family's porch and sip salty tea from one of her favorite cups while looking out over the green ocean. Yes, I did say the ocean was green. Also, it was not wet. We're getting there. Uh, I have no complaints with this so far. None. This is awesome. As the sun set, Tress would wonder about the people who visited the rock in their ships. Not that anyone in their right mind would deem a rock a tourist destination. The black saltstone was crumbly and got into everything. It also made most kinds of agriculture impossible, eventually tainting any soil brought from off the island. The only food the island grew came from compost vats. While the rock did have important wells that brought up water from a deep aquifer, something that visiting ships required, the equipment that worked the salt mines belched a constant stream of black smoke into the air. In summary, the atmosphere was dismal, the ground was wretched, and the views depressing. Oh, and have I mentioned the deadly spores? No, you haven't, Brendan. Go on. Diggins Point lay near the verdant lu- lunagree. The term lunagree, you should know, refers to places where the 12 moons hang in the sky around Tress's planet in oppressively low stationary orbits. Thank you for explaining that, because I totally butchered that word, man. Big enough to fill a full third of the sky, one of the 12 is always visible, no matter where you travel, dominating your view like a wart on your eyeball. Okay, okay. I want to see more Brandon Sanderson like this because what we're having right here is top-notch Brandon Sanderson. Like, some of his other books have not really been as much my thing, but this one is my thing. This is my thing right here. Keep doing this, Brandon. The locals worship those 12 moons as God, which we can all agree is far more ridiculous than whatever it is you worship. However, it's easy to see that where the superstition begins, bearing in mind the spores, like colorful sand, and that the moons dropped upon the land. Okay, okay. Okay, no, we didn't make it 3 pages. We got to keep going. Let's keep going. They'd pour down from the lunagrees. Lunagrees, because the moon. Okay. And the verdant lunagree was visible some 50 or 60 miles from the island. That was as close as you ever wanted to get to a lunagree. A great shimmering foundation of colorful motes, vibrant and exceedingly dangerous. The spores filled the world's oceans, creating vast seas, not of water, but of alien dust. Ships sailed that dust like ships sail water here. Ships sailed that dust like ships sail water here, and you should not find that so unusual. How many other planets have you visited? Perhaps they all sail oceans of pollen, and your home is the freakish one. I mean, that is a good point. The spores were only dangerous if you got them wet, which was rather a problem considering the number of wet things that leak from human bodies even when they're healthy. The least bit of water could cause spores to sprout explosively, and the results range from uncomfortable to deadly. Breathe in a burst of verdant spores, for example, and your saliva would send vines growing out of your mouth. Oh, that is disgusting. Or in more interesting cases, into your sinuses and out and around your eyes. This is just like living in the South during pollen season. So I don't know why Brandon Sanderson is talking about this as some crazy unusual thing because, like, I can't breathe during pollen season around here. The spores could be rendered inert by two things, salt or silver. Hence the reason the local Diggins Point didn't terribly mind the salty taste of their water or food. They teach their children this ever so important rule. Salt and silver halt the killer. An acceptable little poem. And if you're the sort of barbarian who enjoys slant rhymes, if you're the sort of barbarian who enjoys slant rhymes, regardless, and by the way, I am, the spores, the smoke, the salt, one can perhaps see why the king, who the duke served, needed a law requiring population to remain on the rock. Oh, he gave reasons that involved important military phrases like essential personnel, strategic resupply, and friendly anchorage. But everyone knew the truth. The place was so inhospitable, even the smog found it depressing. Ships visited periodically for repairs, to drop off waste for the compost vats, and to take on new water. But each strictly obeyed the king's rules. No locals were to be taken from Dickens Point, ever. And so Tress would sit on her steps in the evenings, watching ships sail away as a column of spores dropped from the lunagree, and the sun moved out from behind the moon and crept toward the horizon. She'd sip salty tea from a cup with horses painted on it, and she'd think, "There's a beauty to this, actually. I like it here, and I believe I shall be fine to remain here all my life." Spoiler alert, she did not remain there all of her life. Okay, okay. So, so, this was great. This opening was exactly the sass and the snark I am looking for in a book. So I will probably return and actually finish this one because it is lovely and hilarious. No complaints. No complaints from chapter 1. I just want to see if this poor girl gets off this rock. Anyway, if you found this at all helpful, then I am shocked. Please go ahead and like and subscribe to somebody else's channel. And in the meantime, keep reading. Happy reading. Let me know if there's any books you want me to react to in the comments below. I'll see you later.